Everything your history teacher told you about the beginning of human civilization is wrong, not slightly outdated, not open to interpretation, completely, fundamentally, and irreversibly wrong. And the proof has been sitting buried under a wheat field in southern Turkey for 12,000 years, waiting for someone to find it. You are not standing in the year 2026 right now. Close your eyes. Travel back. You are standing in the year 9600 BC, in the place that will one day be called southeastern Anatolia, long before any civilization your history books have ever mentioned was born into existence. There is no Egypt yet. There is no Mesopotamia. There is no Babylon, no Sumer, no Indus Valley. There is no writing anywhere on earth, no wheel, no metal tool of any kind, no agriculture, not a single planted field anywhere on the entire planet. The total human population of the entire Earth is roughly 5 million people, fewer than the population of a single modern city, all of them living exactly the way animals live. Hunting wild animals, gathering wild plants, sleeping in temporary shelters and animal skins, moving constantly from place to place without ever stopping anywhere long enough to build anything more permanent than a campfire ring of stones. By every single rule that every archaeologist and historian believed until very recently, nothing significant should be happening anywhere near this cold, wind-swept limestone plateau you are standing on right now. And yet, you feel it before you see it. A deep, heavy, rhythmic vibration moves through the stone beneath your bare feet. A pounding, steady, organized, relentless. And then the smell hits you: burning animal fat, wood smoke, fresh blood from recently slaughtered animals. And underneath all of it, an older smell, a mineral smell of freshly cut limestone dust that coats the inside of your nostrils like chalk. You walk toward the vibration. You climb the low natural hill in the cold pre-dawn darkness. And when you reach the top and look down into the shallow depression carved directly into the bedrock plateau on the other side, you stop. Because what you are looking at should not exist. Not here. Not in 9600 BC. Not built by people who are supposed to be barely capable of chipping a flint hand axe. In a large circular enclosure cut precisely into the limestone bedrock, enormous T-shaped stone pillars rise from the earth in perfect bilateral symmetry. Each one is at least 3 meters tall. Several of them reach 5 and even 6 meters taller than a 2-story modern house. They weigh between 10 and 20 tons each, and they are not rough, irregular slabs of raw rock. They are precisely shaped, smoothed on every face, and covered from top to bottom in deeply and masterfully carved relief artwork that would not look out of place in a sophisticated city thousands of years in the future. Foxes caught in mid-leap, every single hair on their bodies suggested in the stone. Scorpions rendered with such biological precision that you can count every segment of their tails. Vultures spreading wings of extraordinary detail. Snakes that seem to genuinely move along the stone in spiraling, coiling patterns. Wild boar, ibis, aurochs, cranes, lions, all carved with a fluid, confident, artistic command that implies thousands of hours of dedicated practice by highly skilled craftspeople who have spent their entire adult lives doing nothing but this. Your hand reaches out in the cold air and touches the nearest pillar. The stone is cold and absolutely smooth where the carvers have worked it. And then you look up and you see the 2 central pillars, the largest ones, positioned directly facing each other at the precise center of this enclosure, like the pillars of a doorway through which no door was ever built. And your rational mind struggles to process what your eyes are showing it. These 2 central pillars have arms. Long, carefully carved arms run down both sides of the T-shaped tops, bending at the elbow in a completely human anatomical position. Hands are carved at the ends of those arms, with fingers resting on what appears to be a carved belt running around the narrow lower section of each pillar. These are not abstract representations of force or power. These are beings. Humanoid beings of colossal scale, carved with deliberate, considered intention, standing in this enclosure in the dark and the cold of 12,000 years ago, looking out across a world that will not learn to write for another 7,000 years. This is Göbekli Tepe, and the fact that it exists, that you are standing here, looking at it in 9,600 BC, means that everything humanity thought it understood about its own origins is going to have to be completely rebuilt from scratch, because here is the foundational problem. Moving the smallest pillar at Göbekli Tepe, one of the lighter 10-ton limestone blocks, required the organized, coordinated, sustained physical effort of roughly 200 human beings working in perfect unison across several days. Moving the largest known pillar at the site, an unfinished block still partially embedded in the bedrock of the quarry directly downhill from here, measuring 7 meters long and weighing an estimated 50 tons, would have required 500 to 1,000 coordinated people working in dangerous, demanding physical conditions with nothing but ropes made of plant fiber and human muscle as their only mechanical advantage. 500 people who had to be fed every single day while they worked. In a world with no agriculture, no farms, no stored grain, no domestic animals bred for food, someone organized a food supply network for a massive construction workforce in a world where farming had not yet been invented. The builders of Göbekli Tepe quarried, transported, shaped, decorated, and erected more than 200 enormous T-shaped limestone pillars across dozens of individual circular enclosures on this plateau over a period of approximately 1,600 years, using only stone tools and the organized labor of human bodies working together toward a shared purpose that was clearly important enough to generate that level of sustained collective sacrifice across multiple generations. The stone hand axes used to cut these pillars from the living bedrock are still lying scattered in the quarry area. The quarrying marks left by those hand axes are still clearly visible in the unfinished sections of rock. And standing here looking at a 50-ton block of limestone and a stone hand axe the size of your open palm, the scale of what was accomplished here does not become more comprehensible. It becomes actively more impossible the longer and harder you look at it. Now listen carefully, because this is the moment where Göbekli Tepe does not just challenge archaeological theory, it obliterates it. The sequence that every history course in the world teaches as the fundamental progression of human civilization goes like this. First, human beings accidentally discover agriculture. They notice that the seeds they discard near their campsites grow into plants. Then agriculture creates a reliable food surplus for the first time in history. Then that food surplus finally allows certain members of the community to stop spending all their time finding food and start specializing, becoming craftspeople, priests, administrators, builders. Then that specialization creates social complexity. Then social complexity creates permanent villages, then towns, then cities. And then, and only then, at the very end of this sequence, social complexity and organized religion and monumental architecture become possible. First, the farm, then the city, then the temple. That is the sequence, that is the bedrock assumption upon which all of modern historical understanding about the origins of civilization was built. And then Göbekli Tepe happened, because Göbekli Tepe was built approximately 3,000 years before farming appears in the archaeological record of this region. The people who built it had no agriculture, no surplus food, no permanent settlement, no cities, no social hierarchy in any recognizable organized form, no writing, no metal, no wheel. They were hunter-gatherers who were supposed to be incapable of sustained, large-scale organization. They built the most sophisticated architectural complex on the face of the earth at the time. And then, if the established conventional sequence of civilization is completely backward, a new and deeply disturbing question immediately presents itself. Not how did they build this, but why? What was so critically important to these people who could barely guarantee their own daily survival that they organized themselves by the hundreds, across generation after generation, across 16 centuries, to quarry and move and carve and erect and maintain these massive stone structures in the middle of a limestone plateau with no natural water source and no obvious strategic or agricultural value? Look at the animal bones. The archaeological teams who spent decades excavating this site found them everywhere, packed into the sediment between construction phases, accumulated in quantities that tell a very specific and remarkable story. The bones of tens of thousands of wild animals, gazelle, aurochs, wild boar, red deer, are scattered across this plateau in patterns that are clearly not random hunting debris. They show the signs of large-scale organized communal slaughter and feasting events. Hundreds, possibly thousands of people gathering here repeatedly across generations, traveling enormous distances across open landscape on foot to join together in massive ritualistic feasts around these stone pillars and then dispersing back to wherever they came from. Göbekli Tepe was the most important gathering place within an enormous geographic radius, a center of gravity so powerful that it pulled dispersed human groups across vast distances repeatedly for over 1,000 years. Now comes the final mystery, the one that keeps archaeologists staring at their notes at 2 in the morning. At some point around 8000 BC, approximately 1600 years after the first stone pillars were raised here, the builders of Göbekli Tepe made a decision. And it was not to abandon the site. It was not to let it slowly decay and crumble back into the hillside over centuries. They buried it. Entirely deliberately, with enormous organized effort, they systematically filled every single enclosure, every carved pillar, every decorated surface, with thousands upon thousands of tons of rubble, broken flint, animal bones, and displaced limestone soil. They sealed this entire complex, the greatest monument in the world at the time, under a massive artificial earthen mound so complete and so dense that it would not be discovered for nearly 12,000 years. They knew exactly what they were doing. The fill is not uniform random debris. It is layered and organized in ways that indicate deliberate effort and intention. They buried their own greatest creation. And no archaeologist in more than 3 decades of excavation has produced a fully satisfying explanation for why. Was the site becoming too powerful, too frightening? Had the meaning of the pillars shifted until they represented something that needed to be sealed away rather than preserved? Was this a form of ritual termination, a sacred burial of the sacred space itself, treating the temple the way a human body would be treated at death, covering it with earth and releasing it from this world? Did the knowledge of what lay buried here survive in the oral memory of the people who left, carried along migration routes south and west, eventually becoming the foundation myths of the first river civilizations that would follow? Klaus Schmidt, the German archaeologist who recognized what Göbekli Tepe truly was in 1994, dedicated the last 2 decades of his life to excavating it, and died in 2014, having uncovered approximately 5% of the total site. 95% of Göbekli Tepe is still buried, still holding its answers in 12,000 years of organized silence beneath the Turkish hillside. And if 5% has already permanently rewritten everything we believed we knew about how we became who we are, the question of what the remaining 95% contains is one of the most extraordinary open questions in all of science. And if what draws you to that question is the same thing that brought you here, the gap between what we think we know and what the evidence shows, then watch the last video I published on this channel. It is about a city that, unlike Göbekli Tepe, did not hide what happened to it. A city that burned to the ground in 3 days. A Lord Mayor who looked at the beginning of the worst urban fire in English history and said it was nothing to worry about. The Great Fire of London, 1666. It is on your screen right now. I will see you there.